This is a family business, and family means sons. Girls don't understand money, they understand spending it, my brother Nathan declared at the annual meeting, his voice carrying the absolute certainty of someone who'd never been challenged in his life. The transition plan is clear. I take over as CEO when Dad retires. My father nodded in agreement while I sat at the conference table where I'd spent 12 years building every system, relationship, and strategy that kept Whitmore Manufacturing profitable. 12 years to Nathan's 2, 12 years that apparently counted for nothing because I'd been born without the right chromosomes. What neither my father nor my brother understood as I cleaned out my desk that night was that the girl who didn't understand money had just been recruited by First Continental Bank, and the path I was about to walk would eventually lead my brother right to my door, desperate and broken. The decision to leave had been crystallizing for months. I'd known the succession plan was coming. Dad had never hidden his preference for leaving the business to his son, regardless of qualifications. But hearing it stated so baldly, so dismissively, in front of the entire leadership team had been the final humiliation. Nathan had an MBA from a mid-tier program and 2 years of largely decorative experience at the company. I had a finance degree from Wharton, a CPA license, and 12 years of hands-on work that had transformed Whitmore Manufacturing from a struggling regional supplier into a $40 million operation. I'd built our vendor relationships. I'd negotiated the union contracts. I'd designed the cost reduction initiatives that had saved the company during the 2008 recession. I'd done everything except have a Y chromosome. It's not personal, my father had said when I'd confronted him after the meeting. It's tradition. The business passes to sons. That's how it's always been done. I'm your child too. You're my daughter. Daughters get married, have children, move away. Sons carry on the family legacy. Nathan can barely read a balance sheet. He'll learn. He has you to help him. I won't be here to help him. My father had looked genuinely surprised. In his worldview, I was supposed to accept the subordinate role gracefully, to support my brother's leadership, to be grateful for whatever scraps the family business threw my way. Where would you go? Somewhere I'm valued for my work, not overlooked for my gender. I'd left that night with a box of personal items and 12 years of expertise that Nathan would never be able to replace. First Continental Bank recruited me aggressively. They'd been watching Whitmore Manufacturing's performance for years. We'd been their client, and they knew exactly who had driven our success. When word reached them that I'd left the company, their regional director called within 48 hours. "We want you in commercial lending," she'd said. "Someone who understands manufacturing operations from the inside. Someone who can evaluate businesses with real expertise, not just spreadsheet analysis." I'd started as a senior loan officer. Within 2 years, I'd been promoted to branch manager. Within 3, I was overseeing commercial lending for the entire Eastern region. The work was different from running a manufacturing operation, but the skills transferred seamlessly. Understanding cash flow, evaluating operational efficiency, identifying businesses that would thrive versus those that would fail. These were things I'd learned at Whitmore. I'd just learned them while being told I didn't understand money. I rarely thought about my family during those years. We'd become estranged after my departure. My father had taken my resignation as a personal betrayal, and Nathan had been too consumed with his new CEO role to notice my absence. My mother called occasionally, offering updates I didn't ask for. "The business is struggling," she'd mentioned during one call, 2 years after I'd left. "Something about losing contracts. Nathan says it's the economy." It wasn't the economy. I knew exactly what it was. The vendor relationships I'd built were fraying without maintenance. The cost controls I'd implemented were being abandoned. The strategic initiatives I'd designed were being ignored in favor of Nathan's bold new direction. I said nothing. It wasn't my problem anymore. The loan application arrived on my desk 4 years after I'd left. Whitmore Manufacturing was requesting an emergency credit line of $2.5 million to cover operating expenses and prevent insolvency. The application was flagged for senior review because of the amount and the company's deteriorating financials. I recognized the situation immediately. The balance sheets told a story of systematic mismanagement. Overhead had ballooned, revenue had declined, key clients had defected to competitors. The company I'd spent 12 years building was being driven into the ground. Standard procedure would have been to decline the loan. The risk profile was terrible. Whitmore Manufacturing was exactly the kind of business that would default, leaving the bank holding worthless collateral. But I didn't decline it. Instead, I scheduled a meeting. Nathan arrived at the bank expecting to meet with a loan officer. The receptionist directed him to the corner office on the executive floor. He walked in confidently, probably rehearsing whatever pitch he'd prepared about market conditions and temporary setbacks. Then he saw me behind the mahogany desk. He stopped breathing. Literally stopped, his chest froze, his face went white, and for a moment I thought he might actually collapse. "Have a seat, Nathan." "Victoria? What are you?" I thought. "You thought the regional director was someone else." "I'm the someone else." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Sit down. We have a lot to discuss." He sat, still pale, still struggling to process what he was seeing. The little sister he'd dismissed as someone who didn't understand money was now the person who controlled whether his business survived or died. "The loan application," he finally managed. "I didn't know you worked here." "I've worked here for 4 years. I run commercial lending for the Eastern region. Every significant loan in this territory crosses my desk." I opened his application file, including this one. "Victoria, the business just needs time. The business needs competent management. Let's talk about what actually happened." The review was surgical and devastating. I walked Nathan through his own financials like he was a student who'd failed an exam. The cost overruns he'd ignored. The client relationships he'd neglected. The strategic initiatives he'd abandoned because they were too complicated. The vendor contracts that had lapsed because no one was maintaining them. "You've lost $12 million in value in 4 years, I said. "The company I left was profitable, growing, and strategically positioned. The company you're running is bleeding cash and hemorrhaging clients. The market changed." "The market didn't change. Your competitors are thriving. Whitmore Manufacturing, our biggest rival, increased revenue 40% in the same period you were declining. You know why? Because they hired my former assistant to run their operations. The same systems I built at Whitmore, she built there." Nathan was silent. "Dad said girls don't understand money. He said sons carry on the legacy. How's that working out?" "Victoria, please. I know I said things. You said I didn't understand money while I was managing $40 million in annual revenue. You said the business belonged to sons while I was negotiating contracts that kept us profitable for a decade. You and Dad decided that 12 years of my work counted for nothing because I'm a woman. I was wrong. Yes, you were. And now you're sitting in my office, asking me to save a business you drove into the ground." The loan decision wasn't simple. Professionally, I should have declined the application. The risk was too high, the management too weak, the trajectory too clearly downward. Any reasonable banker would have walked away. But this wasn't just any business. It was the company where I'd spent 12 years of my life. It employed 200 people who'd done nothing wrong. Workers who depended on their jobs, who'd welcomed me when I started and mourned when I left. I wasn't going to let Nathan's incompetence destroy them. "I'm going to offer you a deal," I said. "Not because you deserve it, but because those employees deserve better than watching their livelihoods disappear because of your ego." "What kind of deal?" "The bank will provide a $1.5 million credit line, not the $2.5 million you requested, with specific conditions. First, you step down as CEO." "What?" "You step down, and the company hires a professional manager with actual manufacturing experience. I have candidates in mind. Dad will never agree. Dad's company is about to go bankrupt. He'll agree, or he'll lose everything." Nathan was shaking now. "You're using this to get revenge." "I'm using this to save 200 jobs. If I wanted revenge, I'd decline the loan and watch you fail. This is mercy, Nathan. Mercy you don't deserve, extended because other people will suffer if I don't." "What else?" "Second condition. The company implements the operational reforms outlined in this document." I handed him a folder. Cost controls, vendor management, client retention strategies. Everything I would have done if I'd stayed. This is basically you running the company remotely. This is me ensuring the bank's investment is protected. If you don't like it, find another lender. Though I should mention, we're the 4th bank you've approached. The others all said no. Nathan stared at the folder in his hands. "Why are you doing this? After everything we did to you?" "Because spite is expensive, and I'm a banker. I understand money, even if you and Dad never believed it." The restructuring took 18 months. Nathan stepped down as CEO, accepting a reduced role in sales where he could do minimal damage. The professional manager I'd recommended, a woman, as it happened, with 30 years of manufacturing experience, took over operations and began implementing the reforms. The company stabilized. Then it started growing again. My father came to see me 6 months into the restructuring. He'd aged dramatically. The stress of nearly losing everything had taken visible toll. "I owe you an apology," he said, sitting in the same chair where Nathan had sat during our confrontation. "You owe me 12 years of recognition that never came. I know. I was wrong. About you, about Nathan, about everything." He looked at his hands. "I was raised to believe certain things about men and women. I never questioned those beliefs until I watched my son destroy what my daughter had built. And now I understand that competence doesn't care about gender. That I sacrificed my most valuable employee, my own daughter, because of prejudice I was too stubborn to examine. What do you want from me, Dad?" "Nothing. I just wanted you to know that I see you now. Really see you. The woman who could have let us fail but didn't. The banker who saved 200 jobs because she cared more about people than pride. I didn't do it for you. Or for Nathan. I know. That's what makes it remarkable." The loan was repaid in full 3 years later. Whitmore Manufacturing, under professional management, had returned to profitability. The company was smaller than it had been under my leadership, but stable and growing. The employees who'd worried about their futures were secure again. Nathan calls me occasionally now. Our relationship isn't warm, but it's functional. He's learned humility the hard way. Watching his sister save the business he nearly destroyed tends to adjust perspectives. My father passed away last year. In his final weeks, he told everyone who would listen about his daughter, the banker, the one who'd proven him wrong about everything he thought he knew. It wasn't the acknowledgement I'd wanted 20 years ago. It came too late to heal old wounds. But it was something, a final recognition that the girl who didn't understand money had understood it better than anyone. I still have the folder from that first meeting with Nathan. The loan application, the financial analysis, the restructuring plan that saved 200 jobs. Sometimes I look at it and remember the moment my brother walked into my office, expecting a stranger, finding his little sister behind the mahogany desk. He'd said girls don't understand money. I'd become the person who decided whether his business lived or died. That's not revenge. That's justice. And the difference between the two is something I understand perfectly, because I understand money. I always did.